Evan's first thought when the doorbell rang at midnight was that someone had finally come to repossess his dignity. He dragged himself from the gaming chair, headset still looped around his neck, hoodie wearing 3 days' worth of regret. When he opened the door, the universe coughed up a glowing, pulsating bundle and plopped it on his welcome mat. It made a sound like a wet, squeaky toy being stepped on by destiny. He blinked. It blinked back, maybe. It didn't have visible eyes, just a shimmering surface that quivered like gelatin at a rave. A faint puff of steam rose off it, smelling like burnt sugar and static electricity. There was a slick note stuck to the side of the bundle, written in spirals. He used his cracked phone to auto-translate. The screen sputtered and offered, *, please feed emotional warmth. Also pudding. *. Pudding, he whispered, kneeling down. I've got vanilla, and questionable chocolate. Which vibe are you? The thing squeaked again, louder this time, like a microwave about to explode. He glanced down the hall, half expecting a camera crew to pop out and yell * gotcha. But it was just him, his insomnia, and something that looked like an abandoned love child between an octopus and a lava lamp. It wiggled its stubby limb, if that's what it was, and poked his toe. Warm. Alive. Possibly armed. He flinched. It flinched. They flinched at each other in awkward synchronization. Don't usually pick up strangers on my doorstep, he muttered, then paused. Unless they're pizza. The blob chirruped, then hiccuped a small spark that singed his doormat into a heart shape. He swallowed. Okay. You're cute. And possibly radioactive. Fine. Temporary foster dad it is. He scooped it up. The texture was somewhere between marshmallow and raw chicken, which was not comforting. It vibrated happily, emitting a low hum that made his fillings buzz. He carried it inside like a bomb made of feelings. Rule 1, he said, setting it gently on the couch. No exploding. Rule 2, don't eat the cat. The cat, Mr. Whiskerson, hopped onto the armrest and immediately hissed. The blob squeaked, spun, and floated 3 inches off the cushion. The cat fled like it had just seen taxes. Evan stared. Okay, floating. That's fine. Not the weirdest thing in this apartment. The blob's surface rippled, then it emitted a cooing sound that was suspiciously like a microwave's dun-ding. He guessed that meant it was hungry. He rummaged in the fridge, which smelled like dispai and old soy sauce, and pulled out a cup of vanilla pudding. When he peeled back the foil lid, the blob's entire body pulsed pink. It floated closer, bumping into his elbow like a needy balloon. He dipped a spoon and held it out. The pudding levitated off the spoon and vanished into the blob's surface with a wet slurp. It let out a blissful sigh. Wow, he said. I've never had someone get that excited about my cooking. Mostly they just get food poisoning. It hummed again, louder now, making the lights flicker. He set the cup down carefully. Right. 1 pudding. Emotional warmth, I can maybe manage half of that. The blob rolled, hovered, toward him, stopping an inch from his hoodie. A tendril extended and patted his chest. The warmth seeped through the fabric like a heartbeat that wasn't his. Something about it made his throat tighten, like someone had just whispered * don't screw this up * directly into his ribcage. He sat down beside it, scratching at the stubble he hadn't shaved in a week. So, you're probably some super advanced species with infinite knowledge, and here I am explaining what a spoon is. This feels right. It burbled, then shot a small puff of glitter into the air. The glitter rained down on his couch and immediately embedded itself into the fabric like cosmic dandruff. Great. Now it's fabulous. My landlord's gonna love this. His phone buzzed. A notification blinked, * motion detected, front door. * He checked the camera feed. The hallway was empty. Cold air hissed under the door, raising goosebumps on his arms. He shut the feed and looked back at the blob. It was curled up, if something spherical can curl, on his hoodie, softly glowing. Some part of him whispered to call the police, or a lab, or literally anyone with more social skills than a cactus. But another part, the part that remembered coming home to silence night after night, stared at the tiny warm glow on his couch and thought, maybe this isn't a mistake. He pulled a blanket over it. It purred, vibrated, like a tiny generator, and the hum lulled his chaotic mind into a strange calm. Fine, he murmured, leaning back, eyelids heavy. You can stay, just until someone comes to pick you up. Then I'll go back to whatever this was. The blob gave a soft, almost musical chirp. He smiled faintly. Yeah, me too. Evan woke to the smell of ozone and something floral, like lavender that had been struck by lightning. His eyes snapped open and there she was, tall, luminous, and very much not from any country with a flag. Her skin shimmered like liquid moonlight, and her eyes, all four of them, blinked in an unsettlingly elegant pattern. She was standing in his kitchen, holding his toaster upside down as though it were an ancient weapon. His voice cracked like a teenage boy's social life. Hi. She tilted her head, the movement fluid, serpentine. My spawn, she said, or at least that's what his headset translator croaked after stuttering for 3 seconds. The words glitched halfway through, briefly rendering as, I crave your heat. Evan coughed on air. Heat like, emotional warmth, or like, vac. She ignored the question, gliding toward the couch where the blob, her child, apparently, was softly pulsing in its sleep. She knelt, whispering a sound like wind through wind chimes, and the blob squeaked awake, launching into her arms with wet enthusiasm. A ripple of relief passed over her glowing skin, dimming her light to something gentler. The translator crackled again. It has consumed nourishment. And affection. It paused, then added, I detect both on your chest region. Evan crossed his arms reflexively. Right, well, chest region is my specialty, I guess. Her gaze flicked up, unblinking. You are structurally soft yet still functional. Remarkable. Thanks, he said. Most people just call it out of shape. She rose, towering over him by a head, her form somehow both intimidating and ridiculously graceful. The translator hung awkwardly from his neck, blinking a warning about low battery. It chose that moment to scramble her next words into, I must discharge fluids, and then beeped. Evan choked on his own saliva. I think you mean hydrate. Hydrate. Definitely hydrate. Her expression didn't change, but one of her tendrils flicked, almost like a shrug. She walked past him, sniffing at his furniture. When she reached his fridge, she gasped and bowed. An altar to your food gods, the translator intoned. That's a leftover graveyard, actually, he muttered. She opened the door, bathing herself in its light. Cold, she murmured. Pure. It hums like home. That's just the broken compressor. She plucked a can of soda, examined it, and then crushed it effortlessly in her hand, sending fizz spraying across the room. The baby blob cheered. Evan threw a dish towel at the mess and muttered, Yeah, I was saving that, for when I felt happiness again. Her eyes flicked back to him, glowing faintly. Your humor pattern masks loneliness, the translator said. He blinked. Wow. Okay. Straight for the soul there. She stepped closer, inspecting his hoodie like it was a museum exhibit. This pelt of sadness protects you from emotional drafts. It's comfy, he defended. And it smells like me. She inhaled. A ripple went through her skin, like starlight over water. Strong nurturing scent, the translator whispered. Slight hint of synthetic musk. That's Axe body spray from 2017. Her tendrils twitched. A low vibration passed through the floor, almost like a purr. The baby blob floated between them, humming. Evan cleared his throat, trying not to combust. So, what's the plan? You here to pick it up? Or invade the planet? Or? She tilted her head again. It has bonded. Separation now would damage its neural sum. Oh, he said, hot doing an Olympic sprint. Right. Neural sum. Totally. So, you're staying. For the offspring's thermal needs, the translator said. Thermal, he echoed, very aware of how warm the room had suddenly become. She sat down on his couch, perfectly still yet somehow coiled with silent energy. The baby nestled between them, its glow casting soft pink light across her cheekbones. He realized her eyes were studying him, patient, curious, like a scientist who'd found a bug making eye contact. "So," he blurted, "you single or, is that rude across galaxies?" She blinked all four eyes slowly. The translator word. "Mating is negotiable after trust rituals." He nodded, desperately pretending he was cool. "Good. I'm great at rituals. Like microwaving burritos and not dying alone." The baby burbled, which the translator interpreted as laughter. She tilted her head again, almost smiling, if a mouthless alien could smile. A soft warmth filled the room, and not just from the baby. "I will remain," she said finally, her voice low and strange and somehow beautiful. "Until its thermal field stabilizes." "Right. Yeah. Strictly thermal," he said, voice cracking. Her eyes gleamed. "Of course." The baby hummed louder, and for a moment, it sounded suspiciously like romantic music. The baby let out a high-pitched gurgle that sounded like a blender full of marbles, and Jax froze mid-chew. He'd been trying to enjoy his bowl of instant noodles, but the tiny alien was staring at him with big, liquidy eyes, tentacle mouth squelching expectantly. "You want some?" he asked, half-joking. The baby responded by launching a sticky pseudopod across the table to snag a noodle and slurp it down like a neon spaghetti strand. Jax blinked. "Okay, you're officially less picky than my ex." That earned him another gurgle, which he decided to interpret as laughter. When the door buzzer blared, Jax sighed, wiped his hands, and trudged to the door, muttering about how this was not how his Friday nights usually went. Standing there was the alien mother, sleek, iridescent skin glimmering under his porch light, eyes like molten silver. Her posture screamed, "I'm trying to be dignified," but her midsection gave a loud, hungry growl that made her flinch. "You came back," Jax said, relief mixing with a sudden jolt of nervous heat that made his ears burn. "For the little one, and possibly sustenance," she admitted, voice like honey over gravel. He caught himself staring at her lips, if you could call those softly shifting petals lips, and yanked his gaze back up. "I can offer pizza. And maybe a blanket. It's cold out," he said, realizing belatedly he sounded like a guy trying to flirt with a house cat. She stepped in, towering over him just enough to make his pulse stutter. The baby squealed happily and flung itself at her, sticking to her torso like a living backpack. She cradled it, cooing in a frequency that made Jax's ribcage hum, then looked up at him with an expression he almost understood. "It appears it has bonded with you." Jax shrugged awkwardly. "Guess I have that effect on small clingy things." "Do you also feed and clean them?" she asked, tilting her head. "Not usually, no. You're a first." Her stomach rumbled again, louder this time, and she gave an almost sheepish flutter of her frilled collar. "I require calories. Preferably protein." He cleared his throat, trying not to let his brain take that in the most suggestive way possible. "Right. Kitchen's this way. No eating the furniture. Or me." She followed, graceful and uncomfortably silent except for the occasional squeak from the baby. Jax reheated leftover lasagna, and she devoured it with both hands, eyes closing in something that looked a lot like bliss. Sauce smeared across her cheek, and before he could stop himself, he reached out and wiped it away with his thumb. Her eyes snapped open, locking on his, and something electric passed between them. "You are tactile," she murmured. "You're really pretty when you're not threatening to abduct me," he blurted, then wanted to crawl under the table and die. But instead of being offended, she let out a sound halfway between a purr and a laugh, low and warm. The baby clapped its appendages together like a tiny cheerleader, and Jax suddenly felt like he was being judged by an extraterrestrial toddler. "Do your kind engage in pair bond rituals after sharing nourishment?" she asked curiously, leaning forward, her gaze fixed on his mouth. He nearly choked on his own breath. "Sometimes. But usually there's, more steps. Like, Dessert. Her pupils dilated. Dessert. Sweet things. Not people. She considered that with alarming seriousness, then said, I would like to try this dessert if it leads to pair bonding. It would be efficient. Jack swallowed hard, because he was fairly sure she didn't understand what she was suggesting and also fairly sure he didn't care. He distracted himself by producing a tub of ice cream, which she attacked with fervor, shivering each time the cold hit her tongue. Watching her lips wrap around the spoon was its own kind of torture. This is stimulating, she said between licks, and he coughed into his fist. Yeah, that's one word for it. The baby tried to steal the spoon, resulting in a miniature slap fight that ended with all three of them sticky and laughing. Somewhere in the mess, something shifted. She wasn't just some strange invader anymore, she was a tired, hungry mom who had crossed light years to keep her kids safe, and she was looking at him like maybe he wasn't just a temporary shelter, either. When the baby finally passed out in a nest of towels, she stayed in the kitchen with him, quiet and soft-eyed. You did not panic when I returned, she said quietly. Most would flee. He shrugged, heart doing somersaults. Most don't get cold tactile by a glowing space goddess. Her cheeks flushed faintly, bioluminescent ripples tracing down her neck. You are strange. But perhaps compatible. He grinned. I'll take that as a compliment. There was a pause, a slow thickening of the air between them, and then she leaned closer, her voice dropping to a murmur. If I remain, will you continue to take me in? His mouth went dry, but he managed, Yeah, I think I will. And when her fingers brushed his, warm and trembling, it felt less like first contact and more like coming home. Morning light spilled across the cluttered living room, catching on empty bowls, discarded towels, and a small alien baby doing slow somersaults in midair as if gravity was just a suggestion. Jax watched from the couch, bleary-eyed but smiling, while the alien mother hovered nearby, her movements fluid, elegant, and slightly too quiet for his nerves. She caught the baby mid-flip, pressing it against her chest, and it made a chirp of satisfaction before burrowing back into her skin like a living backpack again. It has chosen you, she said softly, her voice like velvet laced with static. You are part of its cluster now. Jax rubbed his neck, pretending not to be glowing inside. Guess that makes me, what? A space stepdad. She tilted her head thoughtfully. If that term implies shared protection, yes. If it implies dominance hierarchy, no. You are soft. He snorted. Soft is underrated. She came closer, the air humming faintly around her. Your dwelling is small but warm. It smells of sodium, despair, and something sweet. That's probably the cinnamon candle, he muttered, ignoring the despair part because it was painfully accurate. Her gaze swept over the room, landing back on him with an intensity that made his pulse skip. I have considered remaining, she said finally, like she was admitting to a crime. Not for strategic reasons. For emotional sustenance. His heart did a weird fluttery thing. Emotional sustenance, huh? So, you're saying I feed your heart now? She blinked, slow and radiant. If that is the organ responsible for this ache, then yes. The baby let out a happy squeak, as if approving the confession, and Jax laughed, more from nerves than anything. Just to be clear, I've never done the whole, cross-species co-parenting thing. I don't even keep houseplants alive. She touched his wrist gently, the tips of her fingers warmer than they had any right to be. I will adapt to your flaws. You may adapt to mine. He swallowed hard, trying not to overheat. Okay. Deal. But, ground rules. No eating the mailman. No disassembling the toaster. And if you're gonna glow like that, maybe give me a heads up so I don't think the house is on fire. Her bioluminescence rippled brighter, like laughter in light form. Agreed. There was a moment of quiet, comfortable, and terrifying. He reached out, brushing a strand of her shifting hair analog back from her face. It felt like silk dipped in starlight. You know, You don't have to keep calling me human like it's an insult, he said. You could call me Jax. She rolled the name on her tongue like tasting it. Jax, she echoed, and somehow it sounded like a promise. Then she leaned in, not hesitant this time, and kissed him, or the closest alien equivalent, a soft press of warm, pliant lips that sent a spark straight down his spine. His hands found her waist instinctively, and she made a low, pleased hum that vibrated through his bones. The baby chose that exact moment to wake up, emitting a series of delighted whoops, and they broke apart laughing. Guess we've got a built-in chaperone, Jax said, cheeks burning. It will slumber again, she said, smirking with a confidence that made his brain short-circuit. And when it does, we may engage in further bonding rituals. He managed a strangled noise that might have been agreement. Yeah, looking forward to that. She curled against him on the couch, the baby nestled between them like a living peace treaty, and for a moment the universe felt small enough to hold. Jax exhaled, tension melting away as he realized this wasn't just chaos anymore. This was theirs. She traced idle patterns on his arm, each touch a whisper of warmth. You are unexpectedly sufficient, she murmured, which might have been the most romantic thing he'd ever been told. He grinned like an idiot. You're not so bad yourself, Space Mom. She laughed, a real laugh this time, unguarded and bright, and it wrapped around him like gravity. The baby snored softly, glowing faintly. Outside, the world kept spinning, oblivious. Inside, a lonely human, a fearless alien mother, and one weirdly adorable cosmic infant began the messy, hilarious, heart-thumping work of becoming something like a family. And for the first time in forever, Jax didn't feel alone. He felt taken in.